Welcome to this tutorial on how to join grinding squares as you go. In this video I'm going to show you how to join grinding squares as you go, and it's the third of 3 videos I'm doing on 3 different methods. Here you can see the chain 3 method, which I'm going to show you in this tutorial. This is the fully attached method. I show you that in another video, and also the slip stitch method is shown in a different video. Let's take a closer look on the method we're doing on this video. It's the method where you chain the 2 chains you usually do, but you pull them through the chain space and it creates kind of a figure of 8 patterning. You can see how it's pulled through the chain spaces and how it's zigzagging up along the attached edge. And you can also see that there's spaces between. So this is how you start. You start by working along 3 edges, and then you attach the second granny square, and then you work your way up and work the whole way across, attaching to the first 2, and then you work up and around and down again and up and along and down, and you finish back up where you started. And that way you have worked through all the granny squares and all the edges are attached and crocheted in the white color. So let's start by chaining 2, and then to attach it, work 3 double crochets into the corner space. These 3 double crochets will not be fully attached to the 3 double crochets on the other side, but they will lay opposite to each other, and you will have a space between them. When you finish these 3 double crochets, you are going to chain 2 as you usually do, but you will pull the chains through the chain space on the other granny square. So chain 2, remove the yarn from your hook and pull your hook through the chain space and place the yarn back on the hook, and then you have pulled the chains through the chain space. And then do 3 double crochets into the next chain space on the granny square we were working on. And when we finish them, we're going to see how it looks after you've attached through one of the chain spaces. You can see how it's pulled through and how you have small gaps between the 3DC clusters. Let's chain again 2, remove the hook from your yarn and place the hook through the chain space and pull the chains through. And then do 3 double crochets again in the next chain space. And we're kind of repeating the same steps now, but I'm going to show you so you can see how it works. We've done 3 double crochets, then chain 2 again and remove the hook from the yarn and place the hook through the chain space from front to back and place the yarn on the hook again and pull it through. So you pull the chains through the chain space, and you can see how it looks after 3 repeats. And it's time to do 3 double crochets now in the corner space, so it's almost the last one. And you're going to repeat doing 2 chains and taking the yarn off the hook, going through the chain space and replacing the yarn on the hook through the corner space as well. Then chain 1 in the corner and do 3 double crochets in the corner chain space, starting to work along the next edge. So when we finish the 3 double crochet, let's see how it looks after you've attached along one edge. You can see the spaces between them and how it's zigzagging up along the edge. this is how you're going to attach between any two granny squares. But first we're going to need to work the next edge as normal. And so let's recap. We worked along 3 edges, then attached, and we worked along 1 edge. Now, if we're going to make another row, we would place the granny squares as I show you here. But if we were going to make it wider, you would place the granny square to the left and repeat the steps of working down and up before you start working along the edge on the top. So on this tutorial, I'm going to attach one above. So I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to start with 3 double crochets in the corner chain space. So essentially you can attach as many as you like in the width by adding along the edge as I showed you, or you could add as many rows as you'd like, but in this tutorial I'm going to show you 2. So you chain 2 here, and you're going to attach it through the chain space you just made by pulling the yarn through or the chains through the chain space as we did previously. So let's do 3 more double crochets. Then chain 2, remove the yarn from the hook, go through the chain space, place the yarn on the hook again and pull the chains through the chain space and do 3 double crochets again. So this method of joining yarn may seem a little bit awkward because you're removing the yarn from the hook and replacing it, but it's getting easier the more you do it. So another time, remove the yarn from the hook, go through the chain space, add the yarn back on, and do the 3 double crochets in the corner space. And in the corner it's a little bit different because you're going to go through 2 corners, but I'm going to show you now. So you do as usual, chain 2, yarn off hook, and pull the yarn through the chain space. And then you're going to slip stitch into the next chain space, and in that way you're ready to add another granny square. And again, start with 3 double crochets into the corner chain space, and when you finish that you will chain 2 and remove the hook from the yarn again, go through the next chain space and pull the chains through the chain space, and then work 3 double crochet in the next chain space again. And you're going to continue joining the granny square in the same manner along this edge until you reach the end. When you're in the corner chain space, you're again going to chain 2, go through the corner chain space same way as we did previously, and then chain 1 before you do 3 double crochets into the corner chain space. So this is how it looks after you've attached along that long edge, and you're going to work as regularly along 3 of the edges. So you're just going to crochet as you would normally without attaching anything. So I'm going to catch you at each corner as we work along the edges. Many would love this method instead of seaming, because crocheters love their hook rather than the needle. So it's really a time-saving method and so fun to do. So we're going to work in down and up again. The first edge is just like regular as you would do on any granny square. and I'm going to catch you when we go through the corners in the middle. So you do 3 double crochets in the corner, and you'll once again chain 2 and remove the hook from the yarn. This is a little bit more tricky, so you go through the corner and place the yarn behind to pull it through the chain space. Then you're going to slip stitch in the next space, and you're going to turn your work to work with joining granny squares along the next edge. So 3 double crochets in the corner chain space, then you're going to chain 2 and remove the yarn from the crochet hook and go through from the front of the next chain space and do 3 more double crochets into the next chain space. And let's look at the middle a little bit so you can see how the middle looks after you've crossed all the way around. And now you're going to repeat joining the granny square along this edge until you reach the end, going through the corner chain space, and after pulling through chain 1 before you do 3 double crochets. And this is how it looks now. We've finished attaching granny squares together. All we have left now is to work as regularly along this edge down, and then I'll show you how to attach on that end. So working towards the seam between 2 granny squares, and I'm going to show you how to attach through there. So we're between 2 granny squares. What you do now is to chain 2, then slip stitch into that space, and then chain 2 again, and then work 3 double crochets into this chain space. This is how it's going to look when you move through the chain spaces, when you work your way back to where you started. You can see you get the chain spaces as usual, and you're also attaching through the chain space you made in the beginning when you worked along that edge. So we're going to work all the way down and then along the final edge. I'm showing you how to go through the seam again, where you do a slip stitch through the chain space and then chaining 2 and working 3 double crochets in the corner. And I'll catch you at the very end of this one because you're working it as usual. So 3 double crochets into the chain space in the corner, and you're going to chain 2 to attach to where you started. So chaining 2 and then slip stitch into the first stitch you made at the very beginning. And now we've finished working along all the edges and attaching the 4 granny squares together. And this is how it looks when you've finished. So let me recap how we worked this. So we started in the corner where you have the crochet hook, and you worked as normal along 3 edges. Then you worked attached row, you worked as normal, and attached row, attached row. Then you worked 3 edges as normal, then you attached again, and you worked as normal along the whole way back. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial on how to join granny squares as you go. Happy crocheting!